F-35 Inventory Management, Presentation 9.2, Management 420, presented by Ursula Triplett from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. The idea behind the F-35 was simple and straightforward. One plane would be developed that could serve the needs of three branches of the military: Air Force, Navy, and Army. In this scenario, cost savings would be produced through the need for only one type of aircraft production. Replacement parts would be interchangeable across the disciplines. The production and maintenance of these weapon systems would be seamless. The reality of the F-35 is much different from the ideal. Each branch of the military required a different set of nuances incorporated to the design. Because these planes went into production before a final blueprint was established, many of the jets had changes and modifications incorporated as they were produced. Replacement parts that were designed for earlier versions of the F-35 do not fit later versions. Replacement parts for later versions cannot be used on earlier models. Inventory management. The F-35 is the most sophisticated weapon system ever produced by the United States. The Department of Defense awarded the contract for developing and producing the superior weapon systems to Lockheed Martin. The production of the first F-35 began before a final blueprint for the aircraft had been established. Each branch of the military requested modifications be made to better suit the operations that were foreseen. As a result, some of these changes in design happened on the production line. When the branches of the military first ordered an inventory of parts for maintenance and repair of the F-35s, there was no way to determine whether the parts that were shipped would actually fit the aircraft being maintained. No process was in place to retool these parts. The resultant chaos led to an inefficiency in the maintenance of the F-35 because of the inability to effect repairs. In some cases, an F-35 would be grounded for as long as 1 year due to a lack of available parts. Compounding the problems was a lack of oversight by the DoD. When awarding the contract to Lockheed Martin, no accountability was required as far as inventory, production, and control of parts. By allowing Lockheed Martin to control the F-35 inventory without setting any oversight or monitoring, the DoD has been unable to know the extent of inventory on hand, the dollar amount of that inventory, and even where the inventory is being warehoused. This has led to losses. The first audit in 20 years of the DoD was completed in 2018. The audits found incorrect databases, loss of inventory to include large motors, and even buildings. Tracking inventory and monitoring usage and recording used components requires a continuing oversight by responsible management. Allowing free rein by an outside group, even one as prestigious as an awarded contractor, is not an assurance of competent management. Inventory stock for the F-35 is ordered 1 to 2 years before it is expected to be used. Because the F-35 continues to be modified, it is very possible that the hardware in stock may not be the appropriate fix when a repair is needed. It is estimated that at any one time, 1/3 of all F-35s are grounded due to a lack of appropriate parts. The F-35 also boasts an Automatic Logistics Information System, also known as ALICE. This is software that is designed to track and order component parts of the F-35. It is designed to address specific inventory challenges, but still is not capable of finding vulnerable components. A major problem here is that all of the moving parts to these weapon systems are not yet added to the database. Compounding this problem is that after installation, the parts are not monitored for performance. The time frame for expected recurring repairs cannot be estimated. These uncertainties contribute to the lack of suitable inventory being produced for repair and maintenance. It should be noted that ALICE system is also a component part that might need maintenance and repairs. Changes to parts adds to the costs of acquiring, producing, and storing inventory for an already very expensive weapon system. Inventory specialists from each military discipline should, at the very least, work with Lockheed Martin to maintain accurate databases and arrange for appropriate replacement parts to be available for the F-35s in their possession. At this time, Lockheed Martin is controlling the inventory and the logistical deliveries of that inventory to the military and other countries that have purchased the F-35. Lockheed Martin and the DoD are not known for swift deliveries. The U.S. military could be much more effective in transporting repair and maintenance components globally. Failures in inventory management and how they impact F-35 jets. Although the F-35 is the most expensive weapon system in DoD history, with costs that are estimated to exceed more than $1 trillion over a period of 60 years. It has experienced an array of inventory management issues owing to its unique designs. Instead of owning its own spare parts, F-35 replacement parts are managed and controlled by a prime contractor, Lockheed Martin. However, the contractor has caused the growth of various inventory issues that have caused the performance of F-35 aircraft to fall short of its warfighter requirements in that it has failed to undertake its missions as required. This poor performance has been facilitated by the failure and inventory management issues that result in the shortage of F-35 spare parts. Shortage of spare parts and limited capabilities to undertake repairs. A report by GAO shows that 5 F-35 aircraft failed to fly approximately 30% of the time in 2018 due to shortages in spare parts. According to the GAO, DoD has had a significant backlog of approximately 4,300 F-35 parts. Although the department has engaged in continuous efforts to fix the identified issues by enhancing the reliability of the aircraft parts, research shows that it has failed to identify the most appropriate actions to reduce the challenges that exist between different warfighter demands and the overall functioning of the F-35 inventory management. Incompatible parts. Records show that DoD often makes particular sets of purchases for the F-35 parts before time in order to support its country missions, among other expeditions. However, the parts often fail to match the service needs due to continuous modifications and advancement in technology. For instance, approximately 44% of the parts that were purchased previously proved to be incompatible with the parts of an aircraft that was taken by the Marine Corps on a deployment. Failure to modify the parts caused the DoD to fail to meet its operational needs as expected. Inefficient global network. Inventory management has failed in F-35 owing to the aspect of an immature global network that makes it difficult to move various F-35 parts in the world. This aspect has caused F-35 customers overseas to experience long waits for different parts that are required to repair aircraft. Cost details for F-35 spare parts. Inventory management problems evidenced by F-35 has been facilitated by the fact that DoD lacks information on the individual costs of spare parts. The military services have also failed to track the total funds that have been spent in F-35 parts in the financial statement. According to Sullivan, the ability to track assets and their costs is pertinent to the understanding and improvement of F-35 fleet performance. The fact that DoD lacks detailed cost data for all F-35 parts leads to the purchase of a high volume of spare parts in varying contracts every year. The department lacks a consistent and reliable process that can identify and trail expenses of distinct F-35 parts through different acquisition contracts. Instead of having individual costs, the department aggregates its products under a broad contract of line items in a manner that makes it difficult to identify separate pricing of spare parts. The contracts fail to specify how the finances should be distributed among varying costs and the number of spare parts that the contractor should purchase, an aspect that makes it challenging to isolate individual line items. Information on F-35 parts is never included in the registry until later after all parts are supplied, and that the DoD does not require such forms until all purchased parts are delivered. This is an ineffective long-term solution to maintain the cost of billions of dollars in the F-35 parts that are owned by DoD, and that data that is entered manually does not link to other data systems automatically. The department also faces problems when obtaining data costs for distinct F-35 parts, and that the initial contract with Lockheed Martin did not specify the requirement of such data. Failure to account for F-35 spare parts. The inventory problems evidenced at F-35 has been caused partly by the fact that DoD cannot account for the parts and associated costs. The department has failed in having records that indicate how many parts have been purchased as well as their location. According to GAO, the DoD lacks comprehensive cost data for different F-35 parts. In addition, military services have failed to track the funds spent on the parts that are procured by the program office on the supporting documents of financial statements. Failure in the government accountability of property, including F-35 replacement parts, has caused inaccurate fiscal audits due to lack of essential documentation meant to ensure the precision of contracted services and government assets. In order to improve the reliability and accuracy of management information, Congress ordered the Secretary of Defense to undertake an external audit for the year 2018, which was submitted in 2019. The audit was intended to improve the reliability of DoD's information on critical assets and the services they contract. After the completion of the audit report, the DoD's office reviewed the financial statements and found various weaknesses that pointed the existence of serious problems in department's internal processes that hampered the company's ability to assure the reliability of financial reporting. It was indicated that there was a need to improve the processes related to the accountability of various government properties that were in possession of contractors and ensure the completeness and accuracy of different financial statements. Lack of inventory details. Efficient management of inventory entails having details on the purchased products, their location, and their usage. However, the fact that DoD has failed to account for the spare parts in the F-35 inventory in terms of quantity and location is the reason behind the failing inventory at the facility. The department's contractor is in charge of managing the F-35 supply chain, including the provision and relocation of different F-35 replacement parts in the facility to meet different warfighter needs. The DoD representatives failed to create a corresponding plan that ensures the maintenance of accountability on the parts owned by the department and those that it planned to purchase in future. This was caused by the fact that property management and accountability was not a concern for the program officials in their effort to field the aircraft. Although the department has many staff, GAO records show that there was only one staff who was responsible for overseeing the accountability of property in the F-35 system. Policies and procedures. The issues evidenced at the department have been facilitated by the fact that the DoD lacks an effective program policy to define the best practices that can maintain the liability of F-35 parts in line with DoD requirements. The department should thus identify policies and address the evidenced accountability issues, take steps to increase compliance of contracts in line with property accountability. It should also increase the staff who are focused on the accountability of property in the F-35 offices. Failure to have an effective program policy has caused the department to lack clarity on the best way to classify its assets and the property data that the contractor should provide. This has also caused the inability to understand the most appropriate mechanism to implement different regulations and the definition of the roles and responsibilities of the lead contractor. Records show that the most F-35 contracts have clauses on federal acquisition regulation for conveying requirements and responsibilities for the prime contractor, including the data that they should contain and provide to the department. However, failure to have fully enacted program policies facilitates the inability to identify items that are contractually established, including government property and spare parts, such as to hold a contractor accountable. Instead, the department should enact policies that enable the department to understand the items that should be considered as government assets and outline consequences to the contractor to ensure compliance. The officials in the department should develop a directive to address different factors that impede the programs from compliance with the stipulated property accountability by ensuring clarity of roles and responsibilities to maintain accountability of pooled assets and furnished property. The policy should define the responsibilities of the contractor in the management of items and the provision of data as when was required. It is beyond necessary to develop a program instruction that provides necessary procedures to implement the requirements stipulated in the directive. Although the policies in the DoD define various property accountability goals, it has failed to detail actions that should be undertaken by the department office and the prime contractor to achieve the stipulated goals. Reason for noncompliance. Although the implementation of guiding policies and procedures will enable F-35 to meet some of its strategies to align its operations with its objectives, the efforts are likely to be impeded by challenges that will affect its ability to meet its goal and objectives both prospectively and retroactively. For instance, the prime contractor may fail to abide by the DoD's requirements of accountability in that the costs are exceptionally high. The contractor failed to maintain data in a serviceable format for different accountability purposes and associated costs. It is estimated that the contractor would need approximately 450,000 hours of effort to provide DoD with the required data. Successful implementation of the DoD's directive could be limited by the lack of support from program officials in the department who are supposed to ascertain that the prime contractor, among other agencies, complies with the stipulated requirements. Noncompliance in the past has been facilitated by similar reasons in that program officials have focused more on the creation and fielding of different aircrafts. In order to adhere to the standards of internal control, the agency should define different objectives such as to identify risks and implement different control activities to ensure quick and efficient response to operational risks. Policies are necessary to promote the desired standards of operation and cooperation with the contractor and facilitate easy identification of risk in the entity. This is necessary since the lack of a strong team to support the internal control system will make it difficult to identify risks and cause inappropriate risk responses. Poor implementation of policies could also cause a repeat of control activities that are inappropriately designed and implemented. Information and communication could also falter, which could cause failure to understand the monitoring results and ineffective response to identified deficiencies. Lack of efficient policies and properly populated system of records in the facility is the reason why the department has had concerns on property accountability from 2012. Continued expansion of the fleet and increased number of spare parts could also facilitate increased supply chain issues without the implementation of effective policies that provide guidance and direction. The program office in the department is likely to continue facing issues in relation to the acquisition of accountability of the F-35 assets if it fails to address inventory management issues. In order to address these concerns, the DoD must establish a strategically unified approach to provide clarity on the best way to categorize assets and implement different regulations and policies while defining the contractor's roles and responsibilities. Failure to develop a policy that addresses these issues and defines explicitly how the F-35 department program will promote liability for spare parts in the DoD's department in alignment with its requirements will affect the department's future operations. Policies should be developed that identify necessary steps required to obtain information and data for the contractor without the DoD, which will lack the ability to acquire and maintain inclusive visibility and accountability over different spare parts in the F-35 inventory. Failure to understand the assets that the department owns and how the contractor manages the assets will cause the department to undergo similar problems, and that it will fail to provide sufficient readiness for the weapon system at an affordable and reasonable cost. Actions are inconsistent with F-35 strategy and sustainment. Issues evidenced in DoD in relation to costs of operation and readiness have facilitated the department to undertake activities that deviate from the stipulated F-35 sustainment strategy. The undertaken actions show the evidence of a shift in the department's intention for chain management and increasing desire to have improved participation by the military services. According to the current sustainment strategy, the contractor should afford logistics support for the supply chain management and thorough performance-based logistics. According to this strategy, the military services should submit requirements to the program officials and provide necessary funding for the stipulated requirements. However, although military services should have direct influence, their participation is limited in decision-making and program management. As a result, the military services are frustrated by the changes in the F-35 construct in that they are required to pay huge amount of capital for less than the anticipated outcomes, with least influence on the activities being improved on their readiness. They also have limited visibility and participation in the supply chain data and modeling to support different operational decisions. Lack of determination of investments and actions for future F-35 inventory management. A reason of non-compliance in the department's inventory management has been caused by the department's failure to determine the necessary actions and investments that are necessary to support the F-35 inventory management in the future. The department is experiencing tension in its sustainment concepts, which includes the contractor's logistics and the effort made by the DoD to increase its involvement in the management of its supply chain. The department's current strategies include different references to support supply chain, but has failed to provide details on the timeliness and the actions that are necessary to support this undertaking. In the same manner, although the current strategy has provided the intention to support the cataloging of the supply chain, it has failed to offer detailed information which regards the investment in technical data that is essential to support the stipulated efforts. The department has had to endure an array of inefficiencies in that the F-35 program makes continuous attempts to support both the formal and current initiatives toward increased DoD involvement. Records show that the vacant positions in the supply chain team have increased, and the staff who are dedicated to complicated planning efforts are limited, unsatisfied, and have a high turnover rate. Failure to have a detailed plan to handle its inventory could cause the DoD to fail in the efficient support of its fleet in future that is quickly expanding. In order to address these challenges conclusively, the DoD must start to handle the issue of cost and affordability. This is essential considering that the Marine Corps and the Air Force identified the importance of reducing their sustainment costs every year. Although the DoD has spent extensively on the purchases of the F-35 spare parts, it has failed in the maintenance of records for the purchased parts in terms of their costs and their location. For instance, the DoD has failed in the maintenance of a database that contains information on F-35 parts owned in the U.S. and lacks the essential data required to undertake such operations. Failure to have an efficient track record of its inventory in terms of F-35 parts that are purchased will cause the department to continue operating with diminished understanding of the F-35 replacement parts in the company. Failure to address these issues will affect the department's ability to achieve sufficiently as a result of constraints that will affect its ability to achieve its purpose. Measures to improve the F-35 inventory management. In order to ensure accurate maintenance of government property, including spare parts in the supply chain, the DoD should be directed to create and maintain an accurate physical inventory and control program for all of its assets. The DoD should have a proper comprehension of the F-35 replacement parts, their location, and how much parts are being implemented to support the facility's weapons system. However, although the department has been issued with guidance for its property accountability, 2018 audit reports show that the officers failed to populate the accountability system with essential data for the F-35 parts. Regarding the supply chain management, the DoD components should establish and maintain different accountable property systems for the parts it owns and manages. It is necessary to develop a property system that contains information including location, cost, and custodial data for property ownership in terms of separate parts that meet different standards and provide a record of transactions. This system will enable the F-35 department officers to enhance their asset provenance for different replacement parts in the F-35 inventory. It is also evident that the problems identified have been facilitated by the fact that the Lockheed contractor maintains records of the necessary data in databases that the DoD Program Office is denied access. The officials from the DoD believe that the Program Office has limitations that should be addressed through an accountable property system to maintain the data records appropriately and promote quality management. However, the officials are slow to identify the spare parts that the Lockheed Martin contractor should input in the department's item unique identification registry. Additionally, the central register for all government property in the primary data source should provide asset visibility for different government assets and links with diverse accountability and financial systems to maintain the accountability over the assets owned by the DoD. All agencies in the department should require different contractors to report all types of government assets in the central registry. Agencies must also identify the assets that require unique item level traceability and include it in the records for easier tracking. However, this capability has been limited by the fact that the prime contractor has failed to enter all F-35 spare parts into the DoD central strategy. Additionally, the contractor has failed to enter F-35 parts in the central registry, which has caused the issues evidenced. This is because they are likely in the entry of information in the central register office until the items are linked with a particular contract item that gets supplied to the department. Records also show that there are various contract lines from the past that date back to the first lot of products that are open. This shows the possibility of there being thousands of F-35 parts in use without being included in the registry, thus impeding the department's visibility on these items. So in conclusion, the F-35 is regarded as the most capable fighter jet ever developed. However, F-35 jets have experienced an array of inventory management challenges that have caused these weapon systems to be grounded for unacceptable lengths of time. In this paper, the reasons for the poor control of inventory have been established and subsequent consequences are enumerated. The research has identified that one of the inventory issues is a result of the failure of the prime contractor to maintain an inventory database. A second issue is that the DoD did not require any oversight or monitoring of a database. The F-35 has Alice, an advanced system software that was made to handle most of the inventory challenges, including maintenance, order, and inventory management. But this system has still not performed as initially thought. it continues to need upgrades. Apart from the failure of the Alice, issues evidenced in F-35 jet have been facilitated by a shortage of spare parts, limited capabilities to undertake repairs, mismatched parts, and an inefficient global network. Additionally, the lack of an all-inclusive cost information for F-35 spare parts and failure to undertake its operations in line with F-35 sustenance strategy has contributed to the evidenced inventory management issues. Military inventory specialists from each discipline should, at the very least, work with Lockheed Martin to maintain databases and arrange for appropriate replacement parts to be available for the F-35 in their possession. On March 6, 2020, the Navy posted a job opening for an F-35 product support manager, and I have the link there if you'd like to look at it. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.